as I enter the war. I'm starting to build the EU, and yeah, this is the best I can do. However, I realized that I kind of blundered. If I wanted to build those big ships, which I could have built, all I had to do was spend a lot of money to get space elevators. And then I could have built the CV7s. But it's both sides. I don't know that the EU CV7 is all that much of an advantage over the Chinese one. And the question on the CV8 is still kind of out there. Like, if I could build the CV8, that would give me a slight edge. That is a much better warship than anything the Chinese have. But the Chinese CV7 is better than the CV7 that the EU has. There's no way I could get to here. Here, right? No. Which one? Here. And not only would I have to get here, but I would also have to get this. So that would have been too much money. So space elevators might not have been that big of an advantage. But had either side built space elevators, well, had the EU built space elevators, China almost certainly would have followed up. They both have the money to do it and to launch what would be another CV6, really. So, you know, I mean, the option was the battleships that neither could actually build, or the elevators to get another CV6 in play. And the Chinese would have been at the advantage there because they have a whole bunch of CV6s. Question is, what the hell to do with this thing? I can hide from the big warships. Let's see. No, I'm not sure. So actually the big warships can't go very far. That's the problem. They are limited. The small spaceport can only handle a CV5. What is the warship I just built? A CV6. So this is actually only able to protect this realm. An interesting facet. I can build and lift this, or these guys, which may be a better idea than building that iron. I catch myself cheating again. This was just a last turn cheat. Let's get this out of here. Figure out where the hell it's going to go. It couldn't go there. I don't have enough supply station to support that. I always think, oh, I just want a way I can do it. No, I didn't have enough support. Still trying to figure people out. And yeah, it's very easy to make these kind of errors. Work for my planning. The concept of Venus. In terms of a resource creation, yeah, it's really good at creating iron or ore. Presumably not really iron ore because it's the precious metals thing, but you know, special metals for alloys and such, not whatever. It is really good at it. And that's appealing, but it's so far in the wrong direction. If I'm going to get heavy production, I want it out here where I can support, you know, exploration of Alpha Centauri, exploration of the stuff that really still has exploration devices. Sure, I can go explore, I can throw robots out to the sun, and that's intriguing, but not that great. So the other thing of value here is the high research value on that. 6 engineering, but engineering is rather filled out. Sure, Asia is a little behind everyone else in it, or is not among the leaders, but really the only thing that remains that I want to get lots of research on, I feel, is the biology. Now granted, I gotta fill out the chart on everything, but there's a lot of time to do that in. Turns out China was not as well off as I thought, and definitely should have built this the space elevator. They're flinging one of these things up. That's not going to mean much. I've got a few of them to build. Well, I got one more. So I got 2 of these little warships. Great. And as a matter of fact, I ought to buy the better one. 232, 332. I owe another buck. Okay, that's great. Yep, I owe more than another buck. That's a CV3. I owe 2 more bucks. Okay. But in addition to that, I've got the problem that I only had the 3 fuel here, and the best I could build was a CV5 at Mars, because the CV6s, of which I have quite a few. Whoa. Wait a minute. What the hell? Are there different values? Is that what happened here? Okay. All right, no. I thought they had a 4 cost. I don't know what I was doing. Okay. So for whatever reason, the CV5 and CV6 are the same price. Interesting. Okay. So I do get the better CV6. But my CV6 is still maybe not as good as the EU one. No, it's better. Well, my CV5 is better than their CV6. They have more missile capability, and it's a better research craft. But yeah, we're definitely, the Chinese are in pretty good shape. They have a better military that they're flinging together, and if they can get a blockade up, that means that the EU won't be able to build ships at their one large spaceport. Now, I don't have large spaceports either, and I have no CV2 military ship that I can build at a small space ship. Did I? Yeah, these are CV3s. None of these could be built at those smaller spaceports. But one thing that is true is I'd want to fuel this thing up. Yeah, I either want to dismantle it or fuel it up, and that was kind of the question, and I kind of screwed up there. But one thing that is true about this smaller guy is I can actually operate out here. Whereas the biggest ship I think the Chinese can operate out there, yeah, they can send something pretty big out there too. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, there's sort of a question of whether I wanted to build this or turn it into materials. Oh no, I know what I wanted to do. I wanted to slip it by the blockade, if there is a blockade. And that's why it's still this, because it could convert into materials that I could build into a ship and keep fighting. And that ship would have to be a CV5 at best. Huh. Yeah, I mean, balancing out what you're trying to do, because you're shipping specific resources. This is a little different from most war games. You know, in most of the only war games that kind of have this are sort of fantasy type things, or really, really low complexity games. Kind of like this, you know, in terms of like a fair amount of abstraction in it. You don't see in Whiff, oh, I've got to get iron there. You do have to get oil around. And maybe in some of the later, you know, maybe in Factories in Flames or whatever, you have to worry about getting specific resources to specific places. But that's a mindset that's hard for me to cope with. I'm used to it in things like Borderlands, but not so much in something like this, where I'm flinging materials back and forth all over the place and trying to handle the trade routes, which makes life a little bit more difficult. Yeah, I'm a little excited because I don't know quite what's going to happen during the war, but also, you know, there's other stuff going on at the same time. So, for example, the Russians are heading into a couple of pirate traps that, wow, they might end up having to pay a bribe or something to get out of there. I feel like I have to kind of make up rules for blockading, which is to say, the Chinese took their action first, so that they get their movement first. That allows them to, you know, launch their ships, whatever. But also to, and probably, yeah, this will be able to be recharged. but also to get the jump on the blockade. And the way I'm looking at it is, I'm in this location where the ship is. If it wants to leave there, I get a search attempt, just like if I was leaving the flyby or whatever. Precisely what a location is isn't terribly well defined. Like, I might be able to do an interception with a fleet anywhere on Mars. I'm not sure about that, but it feels to me more appropriate that I blockade the particular base, that I be doing that. Again, maybe I'm making up rules and adding stuff to the game, but this allows me to prevent that from leaving easily. It also, here's the other thing. The question is whether or not this gives me a chance to intercept incoming resources. Now, the EU is not sending resources in, they're sending ships up instead. And they're going to actually have a flood of ships coming in all at once. So we may wait until those ships arrive rather than send this up to face that. But the problem with that is the Chinese have another big warship available that was coming into play. So again, I can prevent that from being intercepted in the flyby box or something along those lines. So yeah, anticipated China's moves well. I don't think I actually want to move this. Instead, I think I want to build a large spaceport there, disassemble this ship, and build a real, start building warships there. Because I won't be able to get stuff here. So I started shipping my stuff there. I've got my fleet heading in. Do I make a move up against that blockading fleet? And here's another thing. A blockading fleet, and I don't think there's anything about this, again, making up shit, right? Because it kind of doesn't feel like the full extent of the war aspect of the game is here. If I'm blockading someone, I should not have to be searched for. Now, I believe the only exception there is finding if there's a base. Alternatively, if the fleet you're searching for contains a base on a world... So, this is the other way around. What I'm saying is, this ship that's blockading is far enough away that I'm out of the base's guns, but can intercept things coming in, right? Now, there are no actual guns at the base, so I may be closer, but this should be able to attack it directly. And here's the question. Do I feel luckier facing this and this when I get my additional couple of ships in? Or do I feel, and of course there's another Chinese warship coming, or do I feel like my ship's a little better? Let me break out. And I think I'm going to go with the latter. And I'm going to say that this cannot escape, it cannot avoid search because it shows the blockade. Again, that's making shit up here. But making shit up that applies, you know, with reason and with information drawn from other games. If you're blockading someone's base, and again, it's not clear where you are when you're blockading or anything like that. I could just be around Mars, in which case, yeah, maybe it would make sense that I'd have to make a search roll to catch something. But reason says I would position myself near that base so that I could prevent shit from getting to it. What if I'm facing multiple enemies, though? Is each base a different port? I don't know. You know, again, it's just not clear. So both people are going to have fighter tech. We're far enough up on the thing. We both have drones attached. So we're each rolling with a search die roll of 5 from what I can tell. Nothing modifies the search die roll itself. And neither one succeeds. What does that mean? Well, you can't fail in the search. This is like a base search. So the EU gets 2 tactics points. They both have +4 tactics points, again, because their choices are the same. So the EU now has 2 points in the tactics level. I do not want to make a direct fire combat. I don't need to select targets, so I can increase or decrease damage. I think it's more important to, yeah, I don't know. We're going to say decrease. So we're going to reduce damage by 1 point. So now we go to the combat itself, which is indeed here. Cool. Wanted to make sure I had both. All right. So how do we add up our combat? Well, this is a strike combat. We both have fighter. So we have the choice of using either fighters or bombers. Jesus. So here's where it's getting hard. I've already decreased damage by 1. So I've got like a -1 somewhere that I've got to keep track of to my damage. I am going to split my combat value to decrease, let me see what it is, decrease the damage by 1 and to increase damage by 1. Now, the Chinese are going to cancel out the increase with their fighters. Right. So we're on the strike table, and it's an 8 to a 6, but we're both at +5 on the attack, which is kind of weird. So this is a +13, and this is a +11. (13 and 9 gets me to 22. That's direct fire on strike. That's going to do 7 hits. That's straight up. That is going to destroy this. Whereas this does butt kiss. 1, let me think, plus 11 is 12. With 2 decreases, it would do 3 normally. Instead, it's doing 1 hit. And I gotta find my damage markers. Okay, the EU has won the first round of combat pretty cleanly. I just destroyed a CV. What does that mean? That gives me a victory point, I know. Okay, first of all, I have to make a recall check on the EU ship. And because we improved our recall, that's only 30%. So that survives. But it now has reduced damage capability. So I might want to send it back. Earn victory points on the ship size, and we are a CV6, so that's going to be 3 victory markers. Jesus. And I don't think we get a politics marker unless they surrender. So the EU just got, these are not lost by the enemy, unlike the politics marker that you steal. These appear, well, there's a lot of points in combat apparently. Maybe everybody wants to start fighting. Okay, there goes that. This is still at that base. It did not go anywhere. It did a search, so it wasn't trying to move through and didn't get stopped. And again, I'm kind of interpreting the roles there. It's not really well solidified, and maybe this is the stuff that's written down in the errata, but And I'm not opposed to errata lists. It was just such a long list, and I felt like I understood most of it. If a whole segment of the rule book is kind of missing, that hurts. Okay, so I think that is the EU's movement and the initial combat. Things look really bad for China. They were looking bad for the EU by my assessment before, but now it looks like EU may have actually won this war. Not sure. Been more clever. I could have timed things so that I didn't fire this here before I did the combat. I don't think, let me just look. No, combat's its own phase. Wow. Okay, what's fucked up here, and I think I've been doing this all wrong, is combat comes after movement. So I think I should have done everybody's movement before I got to this. But I will try to remember that. That makes things a little more difficult, to tell you the truth. Like, if combat is part of movement, which I've been doing, I could pick off the pirates and open a way forward. And it matters which order you go in. Here the movement is about getting yourself into position to interdict someone. So I've been doing it wrong. There's no question there. And I'm going to have to learn how to do it right. These pirates are complicating the movement choice. A bunch of warships going out here. Now, they're not that much bigger than the pirates. They're a little bigger. They'll probably win. It's worth using them up for this. But, you know, we got issues with that. I'm a little worried about this flyby running into a pirate before things go bad. And other people decided they're not going to take that risk. They threw their flyby all the way out to Neptune instead, just for safety's sake. And of course, if I had not sent it directly to Uranus, it would have been a little safer. Even if I sent it to Saturn, where it doesn't do much, but it could have taken shots on Saturn itself. Then I could skip Uranus and go to Neptune. So that was kind of a mistake. We got people heading for the sun, throw some orbiters around it, try to get the physics points that are there. They're kind of cheap because they're close by. So I get more searches. Well, I get quicker searches, but I don't know how much that matters. It's money I spend for the decade, whatever. But nobody's been going there, and we got the radiation shielding, so it doesn't matter. We have, of course, the EU-China issue, which neither one is doing anything in terms of expanding this turn. They're focusing on the war, but the winner of the war seems to be accumulating a good deal of victory points off of it. And it may be that wars are just such net victory point generators that they're just worth doing, no matter what. I mean, obviously, if you lose, you're not continuously. You're not gonna get victory points. The U.S. was able to slip around Uranus back to their base here, but other people are afraid they can't really deliver stuff there. All the plans were to head there, but that's kind of in doubt now. Now somebody might be their white knight from over here. Or somebody may have to build a warship, or people may have to pay the pirates money. Now, what am I going to do? I'm going to go and take a pause for now and take a look to see if I can discern other things that I'm doing wrong from the errata, because quite possibly that handles all the combat stuff. I kind of waded through it, looked at a few things, and was like, I kind of get that, I kind of get that, whatever. You know, yeah, I'm a little loose on that kind of stuff, and that's how I'm used to playing games, to tell you the truth. So, like, you know, I'm not used to the big online resources being available and lots of old errata there. I'm so used to, yeah, if I couldn't find it on WebGrog Nerds, I would figure it out, you know. And then sometimes find that the community, in the case of some games like EU, because the designer never really wrote any reasonable errata for it, came up with certain solutions that differ from mine. Empires in Arms. is another one where the community and I seem to significantly diverge in terms of what we see the game, and most specifically the way the victory point conditions are written up. But yeah, I'll look at it and I will consider the errata. But my feeling with errata is they may not be as well, any better tested than my crackpot ideas. So I take errata with a little bit more grain of salt, especially something that came out fairly recently and then has a ton of errata. It's kind of like, yeah, you know, maybe you played it this way, but maybe I've got a better idea, you know. Anyway, we'll see what, and I'll come back with that. And I expect this video is going to be, this decade is going to be broken up into a couple of videos at least, because the war is complicating everything. All the pirates are complicating. Oh, here's the other thing. South America was in a position to grab the asteroid over there. Nobody's really in a position to deal with this one because, hey, it's kind of scary right now. The pirates aren't going to search for you unless you try to leave that box, though. So there's something kind of weird there. Like, as the warships come, maybe it'll be safer to go up there. But with 3 pirates there, I don't know. It is worth a victory point, though. Some good news. I found that a softer pencil actually is capable, like not the mechanical pencils, but a regular number 2, is capable of writing on the glossy stuff. That was a good find, or a thicker pencil, perhaps. I don't know. I don't know what the issue is with these things, but they're what I have trouble with on it. They just don't write on it well. But the other pencil does work, and that makes me incredibly happy because I can mark up my glossy rulebook. Unfortunately, this doesn't make me happy. It's popped the. I've been referring to the rules and flipping through them so much. Yeah, it might not seem it with how I play, but yeah, I've been using it so much that it's popped out of that, and that's going to require a little bit of a fix. The questions that I have were not answered by looking at it. I see nothing about blockading. You know, I mean, by the rules as they're written, I would say no, that you're blockading by sitting on a location and you just sort of announce you're blockading. There's no special rules on it. I like what I've done with that. I understand the reasoning behind the combat phase being where it is. This is sort of like the whiff type of situation where both sides move before any combat is resolved, if I understand correctly. Maybe I don't. No. Yeah, I don't know. I'll leave that alone. Because I don't remember whiff well enough, but I think the naval combat is handled in each player's turn. So, not that I should draw from that necessarily, but it's just kind of a... I kind of am just happier with this idea of you have to form your fleet and keep it together, rather than it's something that can, you know, kind of amorphously formed before combat, just because combat is on its own separate phase. But I will try to play it by the way the rules are structured. See how that works out. I did learn a few things that I'm not sure I like. So, for example, one thing that sticks out in my head is you're in the errata or somewhere, and maybe in the FAQ, but you don't draw. If it's in the FAQ, it doesn't belong there. You don't draw these counters for things without settlements. That kind of makes sense, but I do like the idea of, hey, you really want to build a settlement because you have this chit, and it's very appealing. So I'll probably just keep playing that the way I've been doing, with the one proviso that I will do what I suggested and prioritize from now on bases that are settled over bases that are not. So let's take an example. China has settlements on all their bases. No, not on this one. China does not have a settlement on this base. There are other people who have settlements on all their bases. They may not go in the right initiative order, but they may get to trump this base, which would perhaps get a chit that some other base wouldn't get. And we may have that circumstance actually sitting around. That somebody lost, so like Russia. Russia has tons of bases, all but one of which have settlements, but I don't know that they all got chits. Yeah, they all did. Okay, well, it wasn't a problem this time, but it could be. It could be. Anyway. And beyond that, I don't know what to say, except I need to get a pipe and continue on with the exploration phase. Oh, I know, there was one. And again, I don't like this. I understand it, but I don't really like it. Which is I'm so used to this, but ships either explore or they produce goods. Which means, and it makes sense, you know, I mean, if the crew is doing exploration, they're not setting up a little factory and refining goods and whatever. So I will try to go with that, but that's not what I've been doing. And in particular, it's impacted some of my decisions. Hey, I want to go here because I make a roll for the exploration, and even though my exploration's not as good, I get to produce. But if I had to choose one over the other, which one would I choose? Well, probably the exploration, because the tech points were more important back then. Right now, I'm kind of stuck without exploring, and I really need the resources. I'm also kind of stuck in an area where I can't explore. They specify that you can indeed build bases around the gas giants, which you damn well had better be able to, because otherwise the world cards mean nothing. And that they're able to produce. You're also able to build orbital bases around other planets, and there are reasons you might want to do this. And it makes it important as to whether you choose an orbital or a land base. So if you build an orbital base around something like Mars, where I cheated. Fuck. Yeah. So I cheated there by building these heavy ships, which can't lift off Mars because somewhere under here, there's that atmosphere, which means that I can't actually be dropping those heavy warships in there, and I couldn't build it there, and that fucks everything up that I've planned in the last turn, really. Other people's warships have not been so big. These guys, well, these CV5s, I don't know where they were built. They could have been built out in the asteroid belt, but I think they were all built on Mars. So I'm gonna just say ships are powerful enough to take off from Mars. Because I've been fucking that up too much, and there's just nothing I can do about it. Even if I'm going forward, it's going to screw shit up in terms of how this turn works. So I'm going to just shrug my shoulders and say Mars's atmosphere is just not thick enough to make any difference at all. And I think that's a reasonable assumption, to tell you the truth. Yes, the gravity is heavier than some of these planets, but, you know, it's not all that much. Yeah, it is. But without the atmosphere, etc., you know, these ships have a lot of power to be able to fly around between things. And it's one of the reasons I'm kind of iffy on the boosters as well, is I just feel like the CVs, I don't feel like they're as rationally defined as they should be. And I really don't mind them lifting off from Mars. So that's going to be a cheat for this game, and this game only. It's not something that I'll do normally. But I may have to consider more about how the CVs move and everything. Because, I mean, if they have enough engine power to fling themselves from one place to another, why do they need an LV at all for their first launch? And that I've been ignoring because of that. And do they really have an incapability for those larger ones to lift off from Mars? Well, that argument I do agree with. I do think that the larger ones shouldn't be able to lift from Mars. And what I may just do is, after this turn, start applying the rule. But this turn, I can't screw around with that. Too many assumptions would be broken. Thing which can help set my mind at ease about that, by the way, is both China and the EU could have gotten space elevators into play. Those earlier warships that are flying around, yeah, they probably couldn't have been built, or maybe in some cases they could have at a different planet. I don't know. But again, we'd have to rewind so much to try to figure out how to fix that. I'm just going to continue as it is, and then we'll figure out whether or not I make that fix. It's hard to remember. You've got your cards sitting on it. You've got, yeah, sure, they look like ground bases, but so do these. There's essentially no difference between ground and space bases on most of these planets. There are a couple with atmospheres, and they just don't jump out. They're covered up. They're hard to see. And Mars just looks like all the other bases. And there are no bases currently anywhere else that are impacted by the space elevator rule and the inability to lift those CVs off. So we'll probably just kind of pretend it never happened, Stage in the game, there wasn't as much research or as much exploration as I'm used to. A little bit of mining going on, but I'm used to that kind of counting in with the research, with the exploration actions. But yeah, there's not a whole lot in position yet. There's stuff flinging out there that'll hit. But I did remember something. So here, losing one of the things in the errata was losing a base completely gives you an engineering marker. And I thought, gee, why is that the case? Well, I looked into the post-combat effects, and for each CV you lose in combat, you earn equivalent tech markers. So I should be getting 2 engineering tech markers for China because they lost a big ship. And with base building, I don't know if I saw anything particularly impressive going on. That people are more concentrating on trying to get their spaceports built up and stuff like that, but I don't know how much I actually saw with it. A lot of the trading markers moved around, cashed in, especially sell markers, to just get some cash on hand because it's just more flexible than trying to move resources around. This has been a painful first turn for the decade. And I may have enough willpower to do another one. It's late, but it's Friday night. And the whole COVID thing closed down my my entertainment, the only entertainment I have outside of my house. I feel rather that it's necessary to speak to a couple of things. One is the Chinese did not build up a research station here. The reason being, I may have to surrender that base. Surrendering a base is kind of weird. It doesn't lose you much. If you have politics markers, you'll lose them one at a time each time, and you'll start losing the resources at the base. But yeah, so maybe it wouldn't hurt. The other option is to let the base be destroyed. So I'm going to actually build that research station because I think it gains me more than it loses, assuming I lose the battle there. And I don't know what this star means. I think it means the research station doesn't provide any defensive benefit. Which I don't know what that possibly means because I don't think you can destroy it either. But the other thing is I'm thinking about this combat phase here. Now, unless it says something, like maybe I'm reading too much into it being in the sequence of life. No, it happens in initiative order. So here's the thing. This is an interception-based game. It's a game where if somebody else moves out of the space you're in, you intercept them successfully and search them. And then what? You hold off for combat and maybe they gather up forces? That does not seem right. And on the other hand, the search seems to be of the same nature. So I almost feel like I'm doing it better by having the combat as a part of the movement. It really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So searching is in the location. That would work just fine if there was no capability to prevent someone from moving on. And I'm not sure there is. No, each fleet can intercept leaving its location, yeah. So with the interception rule in place, I have a real problem with combat not being a search that happens in your own turn. And I'm very tempted to just keep playing it the way I've been doing. Because, so what we had was, it didn't actually matter because the EU went and attacked after the Chinese had already moved. But if they had been blockading, it means I can't clear the blockade and let other ships move. It really doesn't feel as fluid and as dynamic as making combat a part of search, which can be part of your movement, or interception. So it kind of makes sense to me to be able to clear the enemy out of there. And I just feel like I like the dynamic of that a lot better than this kind of much more fixed, hey, you can only search during the combat phase, which comes after all movement. And both may work fine. I'm just pretty sure that mine does work. It's hard to assess, and this, is exacerbated by the war and by the amount of pirates that are out now. Is looking at a display where you control things and trying to figure out, well, I need to move materials from here to here, but not being able to necessarily remember what the military situation, including pirates, is surrounding each of these bases. And thinking about kind of workarounds about this, like putting some kind of token on the bases that there's something going on at, and I really ought to be paying attention. And obviously with China and Europe, I can spend more attention paying attention. I can spend more of my effort paying attention to them because I know they're at war. So I look at the Europeans and I'm like, I probably can't deliver stuff between here, into here without it being a risk. So I got to think about that. But then it's even easier for me to forget about the pirates. And I realized last turn I lifted stuff off from here, and that's Unity base, and that's here. All of these would have gotten a shot at it. So when I do focus on the war, it becomes especially more difficult. So I think I'm going to do that. It's just kind of it's a problem that happens with games when you have like off-board, container boxes to tell you what's where. A very different situation from, let's say you're in the WIF experience where there really aren't a lot of those. You can usually see, okay, the military is positioned here. I'm looking at this, not this in conjunction with this, and in conjunction with what other people have in these off-board boxes that I just can't really assimilate it. Oh, likewise, though, something like this moving. What is that? Is that dangerous? No. Is that threatening Europe? No, it's not. And having to be aware of what the basing is, because all of that is mobile, changing, mutable. because the nature of the game, right? What about other 4X games? Well, what about 4X games? Because this really isn't. With those, you don't usually have this massive intermingling of each other's stuff. You have sort of a front line area that you kind of have to worry about. And you may not even know, you may not be supposed to know what the other person has capable. But here it's all kind of open. So you should be able to make those decisions fairly easily. Doing so by throwing some of these little wooden markers into play from, I don't know, these are from the German game Falling Sky or whatever, but they're actually just, I have a whole bag of excess wooden bits that I picked up at a Consim World, where I'm like, you know, those things are just too useful. GMT does giveaways to support some of the cons. And so I have lots of little pieces that I haven't figured out what I'm going to do with yet, but I use them in games regularly. It turns out it's not that bad because I've used, so it's a problem, I think, opposed to solo. But in solo, I have a certain advantage, which is that, hey, this location on most of my nation's player mats is the same place. North America, I did some weirdness because I couldn't stand not calling Mars Redstone, you know, I mean, whatever. And then the Russians are a little different too because they threw a base up around Earth, which is something nobody else did. But everyone else has pretty much been following the same development path. We might find the last couple boxes, though, become different as the game changes, as the game goes on. Especially Europe, whose expansion is more paused than anyone else's. China's already out here. Of course, that might get destroyed. The big thing for China, I could recuperate this ship and build another warship. So they have another valid fleet available here. And I forgot to recuperate the damage on this thing. It goes all the way up here. Okay. And that, you know, puts this back in the, hey, am I so sure that the EU's winning? Am I so sure China's in trouble? I was nicely set up here. And I'm building capabilities up so that I can build a base back here that can actually build real ships, because I can lift materials to that. The EU did not do that. They don't have as many resources sitting back here. Their resources are more here, and it's all fuel, and we're just not really on that war footing that we needed to be because we deployed our resources more poorly. The Chinese kind of tried to spread things out so that I would be more capable of moving stuff around. Also, this one in particular is a problematic because, well, first of all, I don't have any large spaceports back here. Well, neither do the Chinese. They have to build theirs. So, yeah. Okay, never mind. All right. On to the movement. With a couple of EU warships here and one Chinese warship there, what I'm going to do, and again, this is because I am getting rid of the individual combat phase and putting it into the movement phase. Again, I have big concerns with how this is actually set up and what it would mean. What it would essentially mean is that this ship could try to leave but could get intercepted. These ships would move there. It would allow the EU. So if the Chinese went first, those would be their options. They wouldn't be able to hunt these individually and use their initiative as a bonus in that matter. It would allow the EU to bring their final warship into place and ensure that a full fleet battle happened. And the EU has less initiative. That's the key to this concept. The other option is I could try to run this here, and maybe the EU catches it on interception. And again, the EU is in the disadvantaged position here, but they seem to be holding all the cards if we play with this. On the other hand, if I let the Chinese trump in, move their ships here, and then attempt to find these, they could destroy this fleet or damage it badly before this ship gets into play, right? Now, let's say the Chinese decide we don't want to trump in, we're going to let the EU go first. Well, then the EU has the opportunity to hunt this ship. And again, I feel like the EU has the cards in their hand. You know, they could then conglomerate their fleet and, well, they could force the full fleet battle. That's what this production does. It takes away some of the advantage of the initiative in combat. Again, I don't know which way I like. You know, I don't know which way I like better in terms of results. I feel like they're about equal. Although there's a certain part of me that says having the initiative should be a bonus, more of a bonus than it kind of is for combat. But like a bonus that's commiserate with the bonus that it is in exploration, for example. But this is easier for me to handle. And that's the real key. Trying to remember to keep things kind of pinned in place, especially where there's blockades and such not going on. I feel like I feel like doing it all within the movement just works better for me. So yeah, I'm going to simply disregard the way the rules are structured and go ahead with what I first thought it was going to be. So the Chinese will trump in and do their movement. And this means the combat search happens now, and it's a little different because we've got big fleets. Now this ship is in fleet with these, so that the Chinese can't just kill it. It could be operating on its own and maybe be safer that way because the Chinese have to attack the military units for their strategy. But okay, so we can search. So another thing is, yeah, search happens during combat. Good. Okay, so this would still work. They both roll a search die. Increase the chance by 1 for each CV after the first in both the searching fleet and the fleet being searched. So the bigger the fleets, the more likely they're going to hit each other. So we go from 4 to 6 for the base die roll. I'm sorry, 4 to 8. Increase both sides by 1 after the first in both the searching and, yeah, so there's 2 extra in each fleet, so it goes from 4 to 8. And both have drone squadrons? No, the EU does not, so there's a -1 for the Chinese. They don't have a ton of drone squadrons. Okay, so they got a 3. They got a 2. It means they find each other. The EU has a bonus of 1. A bonus of 1 is not enough to avoid the combat. We could make it direct fire, which we want to do because we don't have any of this. So we keep going. You select any ships and bases you want screened. Right. Okay. You know what? We're not going to screen. It doesn't really help. So now, this is the first time we've had a multi-ship fight. So we add up all our combat values, a die +1 for each enemy unit after the first in the combat. Okay. Well, then maybe we do want to screen it. Yeah, why not? Okay, so they're at 10, 15, plus, and the +5 attack is to the die roll, right? Not, Yeah, okay. So 10, 15 plus, okay, 16 plus 21 for the Chinese. And I really should be using paper for this. But they're plus 21, and we're at plus 8, 9, 10, plus 15. I don't think there's any defensive bonus. There's one extra point, which was to make a direct fire. It was used 21 to 15. Okay, so this is 19, which puts us on this row, and this is 24. So we're doing 6 to the Chinese, and I believe we get to choose where the damage is done. Damage inflicted 1 hit with each side alternating picks, yeah. Okay. Direct fire, the side receiving the damage picks the first target. Oh. Okay. Yeah. So, did I want to I made this choice. Having something that could absorb damage would be valuable. Yeah, I'm gonna say this was here. That upset, it doesn't have an impact. I'm probably cheating in my own mind there. Okay, so who does damage first? Doesn't really matter. Who's all first on the side that initiated the search? That would be the Chinese. We need this. Okay, so I have 9 hits to do now. Theoretically, they're alternating. I'm not going to do that. I don't see much point to that. So actually, yeah, this is screened. There's no reason that I would increase the damage. So with 9, I can hit and destroy both of these. That's 6. And then I hit this 7, 8. So I've destroyed 3 CVs. However, taking 6 over here, I get to choose where the damage is taken. Now, I am going to choose, yeah, those are 1s and 3s, no 2s. I'm going to choose 2 hits on this poor thing, and that means 4 more hits on CV on the Huang He. That weakens both of mine, and again now, the Chinese aren't that much, it's hard to tell if they're actually stronger than the remaining EU ship. That's a potent ship because of the missiles. And now the after effects of this, well, they're quite large. So let's see. So we took 2 3s and a 2. Those are going to be 1 each, so that's 3 victory point markers for China from this. And I think 3 engineering chits. No, wait. You get engineering chits. Yeah, 3 engineering chits for the EU for losing ships. And see, surrendering wouldn't work well because that would, you know, flip them all. And that would mean that that whole Chinese fleet would be in position blockading this. This doesn't have materials to recuperate. And I could successfully have lifted materials there, though, which might have been a valuable choice. Okay. Getting away after a battle is a hard thing, right? Because if you're not intercepted, if you're searched for and found, you're still in that box hurt. Now you have to slip away. So it's not just 1 round of combat. It is 1 round of combat at a time in each combat phase, but the interception could cause another combat. Now, the question with the interception is exactly how that works under the standard rules. But let me handle this. I don't believe anything is gained for these damages, and I have to represent they're all in one fleet right now. We got yet another Chinese ship coming. And these are all dead. Okay, back to the point I was trying to make, unsuccessfully. So if we look at interception searches, does it take combat right away? It says resolve the interception immediately. And then after interception, combats are resolved, which doesn't clarify whether you wait till the combat is done, but I would assume so because the remaining ships can continue moving. So I think no matter what, the interception part is going to be that interactive movement type thing. I just feel like I'm getting a little bit more by putting the regular search and combat into the movement sequence as well. And it feels more consistent. If you have an interception-based system, it kind of makes sense that the search and combat would be in the same thing. But in order to prevent things from being unreasonable, from giving an unreasonable advantage, the Chinese can't keep moving now, right? They were busy spending their turn searching, just as they would in the combat phase. The only difference is this takes away some opportunity for the EU to conglomerate and bring their fleet together, even though they don't have initiative, and they were pretty much guaranteed that. Yeah, they were pretty much guaranteed to be able to do that. So this has definitely given an advantage to the person with the initiative. It's much stronger than what's written into the rules. I like that. I like that even more if the initiative bonuses, if the initiative die roll was new for each turn. Yeah, painful idea, right? There's enough die rolling going on to have 7 players all rolling their dice and remembering their modifiers that are maintained and everything. I understand why the shortcut is taken, but you could, what that would do is throw a luck factor in where you could set up the capability to be in a position where you have the dominant advantage and then get screwed by the initiative roll at the end. And that may be actually, it may be that that was the original design and then that was determined to be too tedious, and pulling the combat phase out was a way to reduce the effect of the once per decade initiative die roll. I forgot to roll for recall. One of the Chinese ships, the more damaged one, got recalled, which means it is not capable of performing offensive combat, but it can be put in the line in a defensive combat. It just can't search for enemies, you know, and be involved in a fleet that searches for enemies from how I read it, which, okay. But here's the damage marker roll. Now this is what I was looking for after I realized I forgot the recall rolls. It took me a while to find it because it's not covered at all. There's no notes about it in the combat section. But I seem to remember that it had an impact. And this is how one deals with these rolls, is after having read it once or twice and paged through it, and if you're lucky in this case, having the designer remind you, hey, it is reduced because of this or whatever, I think he did, then you have the capability to find this, but there were no rules references that pointed to you. Remember 2.82 damage markers. So I should mark that in. Unfortunately, I don't have my pencil that works on this up here. Yeah, I only have one regular wooden pencil. Well, that's sharpened at all. So each damage marker on a CV reduces its exploration combat value by 1 down to a minimum of 0, where it can't do anything anymore in that. And for each 2 points of damage on a CV, it reduces its drone squadrons by 1. So these ships are much, much weaker, which means EU is going to send its fleet out as well and try to launch and try to discover that fleet. Now, it could be facing something ugly where it's got, you know, a lot, there's still some residual firepower from those damaged ships that's able to shoot back. It's kind of an interesting idea because if a ship surrenders, it's retired. You take, this can't happen in, or isn't forced to happen in war. You take a politics marker away from the enemy. Well, China doesn't have a politics marker, so there's nothing there that happens. And, you know, but you could keep picking on it. You could just keep chasing it and forcing it to surrender again and again. And it may actually end up more costly to your opponent than losing the ship, although you get victory points for killing their ship. The EU made its other movement decisions, which really kind of just amounted to launching some materials into the, well, no, launching a damaged or a retired ship with materials over to the asteroid belt to try to build that up into a viable place. Oops, I forgot something else. I got some iron going there too. And iron is important so that we can rebuild and put more ships into play. And yeah, I mean, you can see how this is hurting their capabilities to expand. They are focusing on fighting. Now, it is giving them victory points, but it is also depriving them of the points that they could be building new settlements with, or better choices, because settlements is usually kind of the last choice, right? Okay, so now there's 2 extra ships on one side. That brings it up to a 6, and both sides have drones, but not enough. So it's essentially at -1. We don't have any bonuses to the search roll. The EU found them and has a 1-point bonus. I'm sure the hell not going to make this direct fire, because hit to change pages. This is how my rulebook got damaged, just flipping through it so much. And it does require a lot of flipping through. So my 1 tactic point, I could pick a target. That's about the best I can do. If I can pick a target, and is that just... Yeah, that would just be 1 point of damage. Now, 1 point of damage is enough to kill this ship. So this one's definitely on the line, and it's enough to kill this ship. So this one's definitely going to stay on the line. Because if the EU can pick the damage, I might as well give both of them a capability to shoot back. However limited it is. Now, this has no missiles. So we're doing, well, I guess no capability to shoot back. So maybe I will screen them if I'm allowed to. Strike. I don't think you can screen strikes. Okay. Good enough. What's my combat capabilities? So I have, yeah, because you get to choose the combat. You can spend tactics points, I think, to screen a ship essentially during a strike. So I have 4, 9. There's bonuses for enemy ships. Right. Let me find the actual rule, not this other garbage. Add up your combat values. Add 1 die plus 1 for each enemy unit in the combat after the first. Now, screening doesn't say that they're not in the combat. Okay. And I have more targets. That makes sense. So I want to wipe out as much as I can. So I'm using both of these for offense. I think the Chinese are using theirs for defense. So that's a +1 to the die roll. So 5 plus 4 is 9, 10, 11, 12. Versus 11. Right? 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, 12 to 11. And this is going to be on the strike chart. And highly variable. Look at this. 21 for the Chinese. They got a big hit. But we were only 12, so we're at 13 here. So we do 4 hits. They do 6. 6 is enough to destroy this. Should have defended with 1. I screwed up. This doesn't add 1 to the die roll. It adds 1 to the... so this would have only been 11, 12 or something. I don't know. But it would end up at the same point, right? Let me think. 9, 10, 11. It's a 12. Yeah. It would end up in the same column, I think. Actually, I think I lost a column. But I do an extra point of damage, which works the same in this case, but it wouldn't always. So I am doing 4 points of damage, but I get to choose where they go. And that's going to be 1, 2. Jeez, I hate leaving this thing alive. I can't kill it, though. 3, 4 points of damage to it. Okay. And our victory points for this looks like 3 points for the Chinese for that big ship. Yeah, just look at these accumulate. And for them, 5 and 6 is only 2 points, 3 points for the EU as well. Okay, and chits. That's going to be 3 engineering chits for each. Wow, lots of research this way. This is the EU's pick. Well, I'm beginning to think that everybody wants to go to war and just fight, because between the victory points and the technology that you get out of it, it may be more than you get out of doing other things. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. The cost is high, there's no question. And for this guy, he has to make his rolls. He accumulated 2 new damage checks, and his recall rate is only 30%. So we survive up here damaged. And the whole problem of this is we are facing, there's no defense there. How about that? We are facing a base that we can start molesting. Now I could surrender. It has its own costs. But a base surrendering doesn't mean you lose the base. It doesn't mean it's knocked out of action in any way. It doesn't like preserve it under occupation or anything. All it means is it gives you some resources. So, yeah. I think that's it for the EU movement. And now we continue down through the people who aren't playing in the war game. Observation: by putting the combat phase in the maneuver as part of maneuver as opposed to its own separate phase, one thing that happens is there's some weird mechanisms you could use to try to get advantages on the initiative chart by flying through a CV, through a bunch of pirates, because the pirates will search for you. And, well, as you move through them, the pirates will search for you. They may try to avoid combat still, but they automatically will search for you. So you're trying to slip through them and get caught by them instead of actually searching for them. I don't know if it's a big deal. It would just be what you do instead of sitting around hunting the pirates. You'd actually actively fly through them, and it might be the better move anyway. But it does kind of hurt my brain to think of it that way. I like the idea of hunting the pirates rather than... and to tell you the truth, I like the idea of the pirates being able to hunt one of these things that's just sitting out there trying to hide, which they can't. But next time I play, if that ever happens, and the if has nothing to do with how much I like the game. I do like the game. The if has to do with, good God, you know, games keep coming out at a faster, and old games. I keep acquiring old games too, but games keep coming into my collection at a faster rate than I can play them. And these monsters, man, I'm getting one play off them and saying, yeah, that's good enough. And in a way it is, because I get so much of an experience out of any given monster. Honestly, the small games get largely the same occurrence. Something that I like this much that's small, I might replay though. I just want to go into my little rules modification again, just because this is sort of tangential. It's not really, but games like this, where they're designed to a purpose and they express something fully, unlike Euro games, which are kind of, there's sort of a black box element, the design for effect type of concept as well. Well, games like this, where there's a fair amount of detail and the rules are understandable, what they mean, what they represent, it's very easy to reach in, tweak something, and say, you know what, I'm okay with the change I'm making for these reasons. It's making it more playable for me. And I can look at it and I can say, I understand what the impacts are, and I'm okay with those impacts, with that, yeah, this once per decade role becomes more important than maybe I'd like it to be, but the cost for the mechanical complexity of trying to remember to do the combats afterwards, to handle them correctly, etc., under those circumstances, and to lose some of the flexibility that combat in the middle of turns represents. You know, all are things that I can look at and say, I'm willing to make these trade-offs. You know, I kind of think I see why the designer chose the particular mechanisms that he did, and I see the impacts, and I see how I could mitigate those impacts, and whether I'd be happier with that, and just all that kind of thinking comes into play when you've got a model that's easy to tinker with. When you've got a model that's so abstract that you're like, I'm not even sure what this is fully representing. It's very hard to step in and start tweaking it. So, yeah, just that. So I was an idiot. Not only was the chip that was out there, that I threw out already, not explorable. Venus is not explorable either. I, for some reason, thought it still was, but it's not like anybody's been paying attention to that. I think I keep looking at Venus and saying, no, there's nothing there, and I look at that and I'm like, okay, well, this time I actually realized the connection. Jumping to the Russians, they tried to slip through here, and they failed. Actually, both sides found each other. The Russians have a 1-point advantage. That's not enough to get away with. I can pay a bribe. Let's see what the bribe is, because you know I got a lot on there. The bribe is $7. I'm gonna do it. Failure there. I don't want to attempt to leave here. Let me grab the asteroid though. Just for the victory point, I'm carrying materials that I probably want, but blowing it up gets me points. It's an egg game of asteroids. The other interesting thing is the South Americans. I have a ship with piles of stuff that has nowhere to go. I had to skip this because I didn't want to go there, but I'm getting here before my base is ready to be built. I'll just hang out in the flyby box. I got nothing better to do with that material, nor with that ship. There's nothing to explore, so I can't go out this far. I'm a little iffy on that I can get here at all with all these ships there, but whatever. I'm going to ignore that, but that's the kind of thing that I would be considering on a later play. Do I want to impose some kind of restriction if you're blockaded or something? That base should not have an impact. And I see this interception of the pirates as similar to a blockade. I know the designer specifies the difference between the two, but that's the kind of refinement that I like to make to games that I feel like have a lot of room for that kind of tinkering. And I also had another place where, oh yeah, I had sent a ship to Earth that didn't really want to be there. I'm not sure why it went to Earth. It may have been I just put it in the wrong place, but now it's heading back to Mars with the fuel it wanted to deliver. I'm not sure that's a big deal at all. I'll probably end up dismantling it or sending it back with materials and dismantling it somewhere. And as we finish things up, China actually builds a secondary base out here. I think that's that can't be the asteroid belt. All the way out in Saturn, a secondary military base. It's not trivial, but hey, if I can't defend Mars and the areas around it, I need to have a fallback situation that I can launch stuff to and, you know, try to develop a fleet that can face the European fleet. Right now there is no European fleet, though. They've been destroyed, and so we've got them kind of on the rocks. Not a lot of interest going on, for me at least, in the exploration. Yeah, we saw some depletions, but nothing too exciting. It's the war that's like grabbing all of my effort right now. Oh, that's the end of the turn. I am going to call this the end of the video as well. Unfortunately, my last video didn't successfully process on UTurd. I don't know why. It could either be the way I slapped them together, using just a file joiner, which has worked so far. They've been able to handle that, but I've had this problem happen once or twice before, and it clears up eventually. We'll see if this one processes, but yeah, it's worrisome. Sometimes they just kind of freeze in the processing and the same video reprocesses. Sometimes I just have to tweak the video a little bit, like maybe add a little piece or something, and then something just changes and it works. So I'm no idea. We'll see.